This week's sponsor is Problematic Botanist Soda. Parents, if you ever call your kid a late bloomer, this is what's going to happen.
No, we just make up a poem about it. We'd be like, oh, red sky at night. What's that rhyme with? Sailor's delight. There you go.
There was a young girl from Nantucket. That guitar player was for serious guitar players. And then there was the other one that had all the big hair shred guys in it, like Poison and stuff. And we used to call that one guitar for the practicing asshole.
And don't forget that toilet paper, hon, because all the baking and meat eating, and we're going to be on the shitter. Take a call with your pants down on that one.
A very large shape of solid rock in the earth is called a tectonic plate.
I think there's 7.
And what few people realize is that you can also use them in the microwave. They're very convenient. So tonight I'm gonna party like it's 1999. Yeah. When he confronted me about it, I ran downstairs and got his National Geographics that had the native chicks on the front with the tits hanging out. Smut is smut, old man.
This is the Snaggletooth Extreme Metal Podcast.
Episode 21.
We are back.
Yes, we
Full
are.
force. Great show again. I know I always say that, but wow.
Last night we got pedicures and a couple of beers. It was great. We got
Yeah,
home.
yeah, it was really nice. We decided to go with the Hollywood pedicure, which involved a lot of massaging, rubbing, even the hot stones that they press into you. And
Stace, you have got to learn to do whatever she did to my calves. No, it's just eyes rolling back in my head.
he was very precise with his nail doing too. He went back again with the file, and then they do the callus scraping, and then they put your feet in hot bags of, I think it's magma.
I think we were being marinated for later consumption. Yeah.
And they kind of make little mummies out of your feet and just let you cook for a while.
Yeah.
It was very
good.
nice.
It's nice to go out once in a while.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, except for the dude on the end who was getting on my nerves.
Yeah, talk about that.
He was so weird. He was this big, kind of heavy-set dude who came in by himself for a pedicure.
Yeah.
And apparently he knew he used to be the owner of it. His name is Tim, although I doubt that's his real name. They're all Vietnamese, but they all have names like Tim and Cindy. Anyway, I kind of knew the backstory a little bit. Tim and Cindy used to be married. Now they're not anymore. So they had to kind of sell the business and split the proceeds was the only way to go about it with the divorce.
Yeah.
But I hadn't been there in a long time. But this guy felt the need to needle Tim. He said, "Do you still own the business?" He said, "I don't." And he said, "But you work here." And he said, "Uh-huh," and kind of walked off to the back. And as he came back out, the guy again said, "So you don't own this anymore?" "That's right. But you still work here." This went on 3 times. Like he could not get it through his head. I mean, obviously he didn't know the backstory, but why would you continue to badger someone?
I didn't mean to overstep my bounds, sir. You say that. What? Meeting is adjourned. It is? No, you say that. What? Meeting is... Play around with this for a while. This week's sponsor is Problematic Botanist Soda. Parents, if you ever call your kid a late bloomer, this is what's going to happen. So guess what I was thinking about? Earth science class. Remember Earth science? 9th grade, I think. Our teacher was like, he had a 1-syllable name and he looked like a turtle. He did this a lot.
I think it was Mr. Knob or something.
Mr. Knob or something like that. Yeah. I remember we learned about Hawaiian volcanoes. As beautiful as they say it is to live in Hawaii, which of course it is, they have something like 6 active volcanoes, which may or may not be spewing liquid magma into the air, causing earthquakes at any given time. There's periodic landslides. And then there's housewives yelling about that they just dusted and now there's a 3rd ash cloud. That's enough to ruin any luau. And this is why not only do I not want a pig on a spit, I'm not even getting pineapple and ham on my pizza because I know the end game. Don't tease me. Yeah.
You know what's really weird is they have like an island it's coming up from the ocean floor, and I guess one day it'll just be there and they can name it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you may not know this. A very large shape of solid rock in the earth is called a tectonic plate.
I think there's 7.
And what few people realize is that you can also use them in the microwave. They're very convenient. Yeah.
Fossils. I mean, really? Has there been anything exciting in this field since Jurassic Park? Amber was actually trending on Twitter for a few months.
Yeah, there was this big surge of interest for Jurassic Park. Yeah.
Maybe it's because of all the fossil geocaching adventures.
See, now I prefer geocharging when we go out for the night because I don't want to worry about exact change. So.
I don't even think people go to the Bray tar pits anymore. Every now and then some kid falls in.
They taught us about this important tool in earth science that is used to date fossils and rocks. It can tell you how many millions of years old it is. The process is called radiocarbon dating. I was talking about it in the back of class, and my teacher said, "Mr. Marchman, would you like to share something with the class?" And I said, "Okay. I was just saying that my third radiocarbon date, I better be getting some action, especially if I'm paying for dinner, or that's the end of it."
So I guess if that doesn't happen, we'll just only have your carbon footprint left as you went out the door.
So yeah. Remember back in 2010 when all those flights got canceled because of volcanic ash in Iceland?
That was crazy.
I was doing a lot of air freight back then, and customers thought I was lying.
Yeah.
And I didn't blame them. It sounded like it was made up because like the pilots just wanted to get a week off or whatever.
Like, where's my shipment? And you're like, volcanic ash?
Tectonic plates. Yeah. I would have believed that the wheels fell off the baggage carts, or maybe they ran out of salted pretzels before I would believe Icelandic ash. But I felt like I was making an Icelandic ash of myself.
It just seems like the more we're aware of things that are happening, the more we worry and overthink shit. Because, the news will jump all over.
We got 24-hour news cycle to fill.
Yeah. Fires in Canada.
Yeah.
And then they show you the map with the descending evil black cloud of smoke, and it's approaching you. So people get this into their heads, and then they're like, "Oh, I think I'm having a breathing problem. I got to go have a cigarette." Or I actually had patients complaining of headaches from the Canadian fire smoke.
We ran when it was going on, and they were like, "You ran in that? Did you have a gas mask on?"
Oh my God.
Right.
It just seems like a few centuries ago, if we had no idea what was going on and the sky was a little hazy or a different color, no, we'd just make up a poem about it. We'd be like, "Oh, red sky at night." What's that rhyme with? The sailor's delight. There you go.
There was a young girl from Nantucket that, never mind. So they say that liquid rock that spews out of an erupting volcano can reach temperatures of nearly 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit.
True.
And that is almost as hot as Dunkin' coffee when you get it through the drive-thru.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Like, I'm pretty sure the last one I got was molten rock.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. And if you ask the gentleman for ice to tone it down, non-Kelvin scale levels, they just seem confused that you do not want to singe off your taste buds.
I pulled up one time to Dunkin', and this Anglo lady named Jennifer said, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Where are the Indians? Did you tie them up? Are the Indian people in the back?" Sped off.
Stalagmites and stalactites are cool words.
They're fun to say.
Fun scouting fact. You can tell I was Girl Scout here. You can remember which one is which because the mites, think of mites like running around, grow up from the floor, but the tights hang from the ceiling. And when they grow together, making a column, it gets super confusing. People argue aggressively on online cave splunking forums if it's a mighty mite or a super tight.
I knew it was going to be a wild night when we logged onto the spelunking chat forum.
Oh,
We had just paid our check when we spotted some sketchy-looking stalagmites over by the trash can. You wait till they read my Yelp review. I mean, I'm not normally a stalactite ass, but you can never be too careful. We'll close out. These geography jokes are crushing. Last one. The Chihuahuan Desert, okay? Largest desert in North America is actually called the Chihuahuan Desert. South Texas, North Mexico. And I read recently that we had it microchipped so it wouldn't wander off or get lost in a sinkhole. Can't be too careful. All right. So there's a grocery store by my office, and it's kind of fancy. I am fascinated by the number of magazines for sale that no one ever buys.
Do you know where I always stare at these at?
Where?
Waiting for my prescription at CVS. They got a whole wall of goofy ass magazines.
Too many. The Time Magazine I Love Lucy anniversary issue. Because I want to find out the truth inside the marriage of Lucy and Desi. Did they really sleep in twin beds?
Is she really a redhead?
Scientific American spotlight on Buzz Aldrin and the first chimp in space.
Wow. How about, when you get the big close up of that cute feline face and it's, what is your cat thinking? I can tell you, fill the bowl, dummy. Scritch here. Leave me alone.
He's thinking nobody's going to buy this magazine. That's what he's thinking. The Illustrated History of Social Security Numbers.
How about Us Magazine? Taylor Swift shares her favorite cheesecake recipes, plus tips on how to barf them up. Wow, so it's a weight loss guide.
Seems like kind of a pointless exercise, but who am I to judge Taylor Swift? How about National Geographic? Everything about mold you ever wanted to know.
Great.
And then more cat stuff. Sherlock Holmes cat puzzles. That's a real one. Check that out.
How about Celine Dion? Her life in pictures.
Okay.
Right. Like you
Or-
can't find pictures of her anywhere.
Jogging. I find out how every step is moving you forward.
Really?
Wow. The whole thing is like an exercise of futility to me. They spent hours stocking the shelves with Joy the Baker's diabetic recipes and the official collector's edition of Don Knotts and pictures, only to pack them back up and send them back to the publisher a few weeks later. Is that a sustainable business model? If you're in the magazine industry, could you leave us a comment? Because I don't get it. I never see anybody buying this shit.
I really used to love to read the headlines of the National Enquirer while waiting in line at the supermarket checkout.
Yeah.
Not actually to read the articles because God, you might catch something if you picked up that filthy rag. There was always,
But Jugs magazine was fine.
there was always and it was always the worst paparazzi caught picture of Pope Paul looking green and like he didn't sleep for a couple days. Pope Paul may never walk again and is suing J-Lo over her exercise workout DVD. Why is he doing this?
I forgot to mention when we were getting pedicures last night, something came up on the news wire that Beyonce made a country album
Say it isn't so.
and
Dolly
Dolly
Parton.
Parton embraced it. I'm just like, they're totally messing with us now. What the fuck is going on?
Dolly got put in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She feels like she's got to give back now.
Whatever. I guess I guess Kanye's jazz album's right around the corner,
All right. So how about Miranda Lambert's stomach monkey stapling nightmare? What? Okay.
Let's hear all about
Plastic surgery disasters. Just reel me in.
Yeah.
Tori Spelling's House of Horrors. I did look at this one, and this was just pictures of her without makeup. How about Sasquatch seen at local beauty parlor getting a makeover and gossiping with Betty White?
Be more afraid of Betty White. I remember those magazines. I liked Weekly World News. It was all about the headlines. Woman gives birth to live goat. Definitive proof that the earth is flat. Yeah, that was good stuff. That's good stuff. You ever get pressured for a magazine subscription? This happened around the time that the internet took over. They started to get really aggressive, like at Best Buy. Sir, your purchase qualifies you for 12 free issues of Politico, Sports Illustrated, or Ebony magazine. And I'd be like, I bought a $6 printer cable. Wait, you're giving this shit away? When I was growing up, the only magazines I actually did like were Kerrang and Guitar Player. Guitar Player was for serious guitar players. And then there was the other one that had all the big hair shred guys in it, like Poison and stuff. And we used to call that one Guitar for the Practicing Asshole. Yeah.
Tiger Beat was mine. They always had the sexy teen guy who almost had facial hair. He had the illusion of it. And he was a rocker, and he looked either smug or surprised to be hanging on your bedroom wall.
Designer stubble. Little dab will do ya. So, close with this. This actually happened. I usually didn't buy Hit Parader because it was a shit magazine, but I happened to have one in the bathroom. And my father came in, opened it right up to a raunchy Motley Crue story about them fucking a girl backstage with a wine bottle. He was not pleased. So when he confronted me about it, I ran downstairs and got his National Geographics that had the native chicks on the front with the tits hanging out. Smut is smut, old man. Okay, want to talk about a feature interview?
Our feature interview this week is with Scotty Heath, aka Scotty Karate, longtime owner of the indie label Tankcrimes Records. Scotty is full of great information from the perspective of a DIY label, great stories about bands, starting a label, and the upcoming Brain Squeeze Festival with Ghoul, Necrot, Dead Heat, Toxic Holocaust, and more.
All right, let's play a song. This is Necrot's new one, Cut the Cord. Okay, let's talk about Patreon. The site is patreon.com/Snaggletooth Podcasts. It is filled with tons of bonus content that you can't see anywhere else. More Mark and Stace than anyone can possibly handle without going insane.
You can see our garden from last year
A couple things I'm going to review.
and some good Mark music reviews
Yeah,
that
so
you
this-
don't get to see here.
This week I'm going to upload. This is a split between Whip Striker. Hang on, this one. The font's tough on this one. Whip Striker and Ophicus. Whip Striker. Whip Striker and Ophicus. Don't I look like a college professor with the ponytail and the? Do this. We got to make changes. Anyway. And this is a garage punk band. I think they're from Salt Lake City called the Knockout Pills. Came out a few years ago. So you got garage punk and you got Venom style metal. Are these any good? Are they worth hearing? Do they still stand up? You'll just have to log on to patreon.com and see.
And remember to become a Patreon of our show. It costs you less than you'll spend on that molten hot Dunkin' Donuts coffee each
right.
month. It's $6.66 a month.
That you burned your ass on. Yes. Okay. Have you ever noticed that it's really interesting how different people react to snow in the
Oh,
forecast?
God, yeah.
People that you thought were completely normal will suddenly say things like, they're calling for snow tomorrow, so you won't see me in the office. Like it's some sort of Old Testament swarm of locusts type of thing. And I'll be like, wait a minute, the forecast is flurries and a high of 40. I always assumed that these people were involved in some sort of tragic multi-snowplow pileup that left them in a Jack London novel situation.
You know, old people will cancel their doctor's appointments if there is any mention of winter weather. It doesn't matter if it's happened yet or not. They'll be like, oh, I don't leave the house if it's precipitating anything. We're going to reschedule 42 times till it's sunny.
Yeah. On the other hand, I'm going to solve the riddle for you people. The way you can tell who will go in the office and who will not in the snow has to do with small children and annoying spouses. The person that has to deal with small children will do anything but break their neck to get into the office to get away from the chaos. Otherwise, you can't get anything done. 27 inches and a wind chill of 7. It wasn't that bad. I took the truck and I left at 4 in the morning. I made coffee. Yeah. That used to be me. There was a time in my life when I couldn't work from home ever. I had to get out. And one time my car hit a patch of ice on I-95 and I literally spun around.
Oh my God.
Like I was facing the opposite way. I made some deals when that was happening. And there were some expletives, yeah. But luckily we were all going like 7 miles an hour, so I didn't hit anybody. I had to push the conference call back a half an hour. Yeah. But it was still better than being stuck at home with daddy on board. Yeah. You ever have one of those salt trucks drive by? Your car gets pelted with 167 pounds of salt crystals. Sadly, it happened one time and my window was still down from the drive-through.
God.
I really needed a good dust buster for that.
I had
Yeah.
that happen. I was once, it was one of those freak snowstorms that people were not prepared for.
Mhm.
I was driving home from work and multiple cars were stuck on 695. You literally couldn't move.
Yeah.
So the lady next to me motioned she wanted me to roll down my window. By the way, I actually had to do this because it was the Saturn. I didn't have this.
Right.
So I rolled down my window and I didn't know what she was going to say. And she says to me, "Are you stuck?" Yes, we're all stuck. This is why we are sitting motionless on the highway. I'm not knitting in the middle of the fast lane.
Just thought we'd hang out for a while.
But finally, when that salt truck came by and I heard it hit my car for once, I was like, yay, because we could move
I can see
again.
that. Yeah. This might be a Northeast thing. I'm fascinated by the people. All right, you've taken the time to dig out your parking spot, and you can't just leave it vacant when you go to
No.
work. That's why you drag the coffee table, the china cabinet, and the overstuffed lazy boy out into the street to save your spot. Don't even think about it parking here, asshole. Maybe we're planning on watching Chicago PD out in our parking spot tonight.
Yeah, I used to live next to a lady who would, drag out, the space with all the summer folding chairs and put those out there. And one lady actually had a sign on it that said single mom spot. Like you were going, oh, I was going to take the spot, but I won't take a
That's
single
close.
mom spot.
Yeah, she's pulling out all the stops.
But, it looked like a impromptu parade was about to break out. They were saving their spots
Yeah.
in the snow.
There's also this tendency, at least in Baltimore, to stock up for an upcoming storm.
Run to the
Bread
store.
and toilet paper fly off the shelves because toast making and toilet sitting both go up 20% when it has snow outside. Yeah.
You know, I have been in a position where, I still work both jobs, still had the grocery shop. So I got to the store late and there was zero meat. I mean, it was picked clean. I mean, really, when in Maryland have we ever been snowed in more than 2 days? Hardly. And
No one's being airlifted out
can
of their house now.
count on, one hand the time we've been snowed in for 2+ days. And the attitude, I'm going to buy all the meat and we're going to survive this in style. Hell, I might grill filet mignons in the snow. The fuck if I am eating peanut butter? But my hack that night that I figured out is people forget there is meat in the frozen food section. They have frozen ground beef and whole chickens. Score! Haha, we're eating anyway, motherfuckers.
Mhm.
There's also a popular hoarding item is sugar. And I didn't realize this, but I guess me and everybody else likes to bake during the snow. I like that, the kids could be out playing snow, come into, hot chocolate chip cookies. It just seemed like a good thing to do. So I went to buy sugar. Also, there were no bags of sugar, 0. They were all gone. So I looked up and there was one of those sugar shakers for coffee. So I ended up buying that. I wonder why people pack on the pounds during winter. You're just baking and sitting around the house. And don't forget that toilet paper, hun, because all the baking and meat eating and we're going to be on the shitter. Take a caught with your pants down on that one. Better get the mega pack just to be safe.
You're out of Captain Crunch all berries.
You're not going to be able to survive if all you can eat is macaroni and cheese
My
and
last
peanut butter.
snow-related story. So we had some pretty bad ice storms in Baltimore a few years ago. And there was like no salt. Like it was like gone. Even the city was out, right? And I went to Home Depot, like it was like 7 o'clock in the morning to buy something. And I happened upon an entire pallet of road salt. And this other man came up. We're just standing over this pallet of this valuable commodity. And I said something like, would you like to form a black market road salt partnership? We didn't. That's the closest I ever came. I was like, we could charge $300 a bag.
That reminds me of another Home Depot story. It was going around the internet. I don't know if this was actually true or made up, but it seems plausible. They were supposed to, in kindergarten, draw a picture of their mom at work. So a kid turned in this picture, and it was a stick figure kind of holding onto a pole. And all around her were other stick figures holding up dollar bills. So when the woman got the assignment back, she was mortified and wrote a letter into the teacher that said, I am not now or have I ever been an exotic dancer. I work at the Home Depot, and my daughter was trying to picture me during the last snowstorm when I had the last snow shovel and everyone was trying to buy it from me.
Stick with the pole dancer story. It's better. All right, let's play a song. Let's introduce it.
This is Dead Heat, Endless Torment.
Let's talk about it. Hum Nutrition.
Great little company out of California, Hum. They make supplements for everything. And if you know, the older you get, the more you try to get an edge on things. And not only are these just, wandering up and down the supplement aisle, Googling what does best for you, these products are designed by doctors and they actually work because there's actually science behind what's in them.
Science.
I mean, everyone knows, about the apple cider shots helping your metabolism, but they're kind of gross to do.
Yeah.
Well, they have an apple cider gummy that takes out all the yuckiness. They're actually quite yummy. They have supplements like red carpet to help your skin and nails look their best. They have tons of different for concerns, even for acne, If you just want a multivitamin, if you're looking for something to help your liver with maybe one or two of those indulgences, they sure do have products that will help you through everything. If you're not sure what's right for you, they have a whole quiz you can take. And if you're still not sure, you can talk to a doctor online. They are also one of these programs that the more you buy, the more you save. They also give you points for your purchases that you can redeem for products later. They're very addictive. Mark and I take them every day. So you can start feeling and looking your best. It's beauty from the inside out, which makes a lot more sense than dumping on makeup. So
You have to go pretty far down on the website, but they do have this one that I really like called Doolittle Drops. When you take them, you can communicate with all the animals.
anyway, use our link. It will save you off your first order.
Okay. And I remember what we left down here last night. My 45 from 1982,
Wow.
Prince 1999.
It's not even that yellowed.
Remember this? You know these words. Wars all around us. Mind says prepare to fight.
So what?
If I gotta die, I'm gonna listen to my body tonight. Those first couple lines sound like they could be like death metal. They say 2000 party over. Oops, they're out of time. So tonight I'm gonna party like it's 1999. Yeah.
They have some weirder stuff on there. Like I think that they took out for a regular radio play.
Yeah.
Like that weird intro.
Yeah. You're gonna hear the weird intro. Well, it comes in at the end of the song too.
Yeah.
But
And
by then you're already into it. But
I was kind of felt cheated by the original radio version because at
they
the
chopped that
end,
right off.
They
It's
go
like, this is
in-
gonna freak people out. Yeah.
They go into all that jangly, you immediately knew it was Prince guitar
Yeah.
playing. And that also was a treat. So
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're actually focusing on the 2001 album from Ashes Rise. It's called Silence. So the late 90s and early 2000s, we found ourselves awash in great hardcore from Catharsis, Infest, Tragedy, and a ton of others. But for some reason, this four-piece from Nashville seemed to steal most of the listens. There's something about the two guitar tandem of Brad Boatwright and John Wilkerson that gave the early From Ashes Rise records a sort of enlightened neocrust vibe. Despite the influx of cool bands around this time, most of them did not have two guitarists playing off each other like these two. Evidence that there's a lot more lurking in the composition of this band than verse, chorus, verse about equality or working your shitty job. Silence was the band's second vinyl slab. All of the material had already been released on a full discography CD the year prior. This was the era of the CD. And the song lengths are all over the map, from under a minute to 3 to 4 minute mini epics, demonstrating another interesting dimension of this quartet. 11 songs span 22 minutes, but the layered introspective segues, slow building drama, and hard-hitting percussion combine distinctively for maximum impact. So this song is called Accomplishment.
drummer Dave Atchison offers plenty of speeding rage in cuts like Public Service and Blood on the Screen. But it's actually the slow to mid-tempo segments of this record that are the most fascinating. Center of the World is the longest cut on the album, essentially 2 songs melded into one. The brawny power chords of the first segment giving way to the instrumental guitar that sounds like a Merciful Fate intro. Beware the Golden Tide is another slow burn intro full of dark dissonance that eventually explodes into raging speed. Wilkerson and Boatwright trading off husky shouts at a discharge-friendly pace. The Widow is another lengthy track that toys with crushing mid-paced riffing before slipping through the cosmic wormhole once again into echoey guitar arpeggios. There is a very metallic vibe to the way the band changes gears and how prominent the guitar arrangements are in the overall sound.
The band would go on to release another full-length album and several singles before shifting into silent mode in 2012. And this is an essential pickup for fans of hardcore and or crossover metal. Silence is anything but. This song is called Trading Children. Okay, why don't you see it?
So this is our interview with Scotty from Tankcrimes. We really enjoyed getting to know him. Heck, I think we could have hung out for another hour, but he had to go to the post office. We had such a great conversation. But he has some really interesting stories and about what he had to do to keep this label going. So take it away.
I almost cried when we did Blaspheming Monikers. You'll see. Yeah, so I'm really familiar with your catalog. Just forgive me if I ask questions going back to like 2004 and stuff, because that's that era. So
sorry I broke this fucking thing. I'm trying my best here, guys.
all right.
Oh my God. I was doing a live stream one day.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I had my phone in a like a tripod, and then as I'm talking, the whole thing went sideways. I was like, great.
Yeah, that was a great live stream. People loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did the same stupid fucking thing. All I needed was a tripod to hold my phone, right?
Right.
But I bought one that needs to be charged. But it's got all these options. See, like I can do like this, but I don't need any of that shit. I just needed something to hold my fucking phone. And yeah, I've been on like this Scotty press tour the last week. And yeah, it runs out of batteries and just drops the phone on the ground.
Oh,
like
wow.
the one thing I needed to do is hold the phone. Like if it doesn't have a
Exactly.
charge, it doesn't even grip it. It's fucking stupid. But yeah.
I know. Another
Anyways.
fried Mexican-made product, right? So.
Yeah. So here it looks like I have a full charge on my tripod. So hopefully we can.
Okay, good.
And it finally stopped raining out here, so I'm outside. It's nice out.
Yeah, it looks nice. Yeah.
Where are
We
you
don't have
guys
to-
at?
We're
Where
in
am I talking to you guys
Baltimore.
from?
We're in Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Our weather's
All right.
crappy. Yeah, right now.
Yeah.
And so is our football team.
And so is our football team. Yes.
Oh, I'm not a sports fan, but I grew up outside of Detroit. So one of the reasons
Okay.
I might not be a sports fan is because the Detroit Lions never won a game. So I just watched
Yeah.
like angry grandparents, uncles, and fathers like my whole
Yeah.
childhood, and was like, what are you guys getting out of this shit?
I can relate.
And yeah.
Well, it's funny because we got rid of our cable provider to save money last year, and the only thing that we lost was live sports. So when the Ravens got eliminated yesterday, I was like, yes, we never paid for it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Trying to take the good
Yeah.
out of the bad, So
We've just been listening to it on the radio and going old school.
I'm so glad we didn't pay $180 a month to watch that shitty end of the season.
I did. We licensed a Dystopia song to AEW to Darby Allin, and
Okay.
I wanted to watch it live so bad, and I signed up for like 3 different things because I couldn't figure out how I was gonna watch it, and I like needed to see it happen live.
Right.
And then Darby just tweeted the whole video like 5 minutes after it went on the
Oh, my
air, and
God.
so I
Yeah.
did not need to do all that, and
I know.
then I had to
it's-
cancel like 3 services.
We finally decided, we were like, look, if the game looks really good, we'll go up to the bar and watch it, right? We never even did that. So yeah.
We
So,
just stayed with the great commentators who go, oh my God, oh my God. And we're like, would you please tell us what's happening? We can't see it.
yeah, we can't see what you're doing.
You're
Yeah.
yelling, oh my God, is
Yeah.
not helping. Did he get eaten by a lion? I don't know what just happened.
So you were a drummer in Sec, I think. How did you get into drumming, and do you still like step in once in a while when you're doing when a band needs help, or how does that work?
So I got into drumming because I had the most money when we decided to form a band with 4 friends. I was waiting tables. So I
Okay.
had more disposable cash than like, I think this is when we formed Deadfall. I think like the singer was a bar back, but so I made more than him because I worked at kind of a fancier spot in SF.
Okay.
And then I think it was like, maybe they were students, or maybe Mark worked at like Ben and Jerry's. Anyways, I was the only one who had like $350.
Okay. I can relate to
And
that.
like
Yeah.
we already, so it was like everyone else already had, like our guitar player knew how to play guitar. Our bass player didn't know how to play bass, but our guitar player had a bass. I didn't know how to play drums, but I was the only one that could afford a kit.
That's
So
right.
that's how punk bands start, you know? So I
Exactly.
was that. And I actually now, so my wife and I moved out here. We're in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And we've been out here for about 1.5 years since I left Oakland. And I did just build a shed, another outbuilding here where I'm going to set up musical equipment, but I haven't sat behind a drum kit in a really long time. And I don't consider myself a musician. And that might seem crazy because I've like played drums on 3 different continents, but I don't even really have time. You know, I can play drums fast. I could do what needed to be done. And I feel really fortunate for the scene I found myself a part of, and kind of that era of music where it was just like, if I could play aggressively and animated, we could rock the shit out of a house party, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard for me to listen to some of those records, especially Votsec. We were doing like 4 releases a year for 10 years. Like we have so many records. I don't even have them all. But we were kind of in that scene where it was like, oh, they want to do a split. Oh, this label wants to do it. Oh, whatever. And we were just writing songs in the studio, you know, and just shitting them out.
Yeah, I still have the Deadfall you sent me. It's one of the 7 inches colored. I really like it. It's really good.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of I don't want to give the wrong idea that I'm not proud of all the music, but a lot of about punk, you know, it's certainly like me as a band member, not as a label guy. The scene I participated in, you know, punk's fleeting. A lot of times you have to be there. You know, of course there's classic albums and albums that go across that span generations. And, you know, half of my label is doing reissues now. So I obviously understand that. But a lot of punk is like, what band came to your town that summer and was at a great party? It's about the feeling you get while you were there, you know? And I think because of that energy of having to just be in the room with the band, and also I don't want to say people aren't in the moment because of their phones, because I don't believe that, but I think that for a sloppy band to get far, everyone has to be in the moment, and it's about having a good time. It's much more about the feelings that you're getting while you're watching the music than, you know, putting those songs on the mixtape you're going to listen to on the bus, you know?
Yeah.
Save that for a band that can play and write a tune.
I mean, one thing about your label that I noticed it years ago when you were sending me stuff was, it seemed like every artist that you would send me, there was a thread of humor that ran through it. Is that just your personality, or what makes that? I mean, I know that Dystopia has no sense of humor. I get that, but
well, actually,
everybody
they do.
else, pretty
you know,
much.
Well, first of all, I'll do 2 answers. I'm a super goofy guy, and people sometimes don't understand because I like to champion how I still listen to ska and shit all the time. And I love 311 and Sublime and stuff. And some people that'll really get to them. And then I'm like, have you listened to the music I put out? Like, some of it's really dark. Like, I need like a there and there. So, but you're right. You know, there's bands that incorporate a lot of humor, and that's not what's important to me so much as I like an artist that takes their art very seriously, but also doesn't take themselves too seriously at all. And there's something about that. It's a personality trait more than a form of performance or writing music or making art in general. And I think that I only work with friends on the label, and I think I'm just attracted to that personality type. You know?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. So you weren't the original founder of Tankcrimes. Who was, and what was it originally called, and how did you kind of come to be at the helm?
Okay, so I am the original founder of Tankcrimes, but our very first release was put out by a guy named Bob Scammon on Controlled by Plague Records. And how it went down was he offered to put out our record for Deadfall, and we enthusiastically said yes, and we're absolutely thrilled. We were a new band. Nothing was cooler than going to be able to put out a 7-inch. We felt like if we had a record, then we could go on tour too. You know, it's a big move, you know, get a record out. And what Bob did was we recorded the record, we submitted everything. And what Bob did was he showed up at our house, the original Tankcrimes in San Francisco, and handed us all 1,000 records and said, there it is. I put out your guys' record.
Wow.
Okay, this is great. But that was his idea. Like, Bob was super cool, crust punk guy. And he had like a seasonal labor, maybe even a union job. Like, he did really good and didn't work all year round. So he made up a bunch of money like in a season. And then even when he dropped off the record, he was like, yeah, I'm going to go train hopping and traveling. So I wanted to make sure to drop these off. I'm really glad they showed up before I left. And we were like, obviously really stoked. And obviously having a free 1,000 records made it really easy for us to have a successful first tour, you know, because we just had that really, you know, I mean, 7 inches at the time sold for $3, but that was $3,000 we had in the band fund. If we could just get out there and sell them, you know?
Yeah.
But it was like, we thought we were on a record label. So we were hoping to, you know, get a review in Maximum Rock and Roll and maybe get played on a college radio show and, you know, maybe the record would be in some stores and stuff. Like, we didn't think it was going to be huge, but we thought some of that effort went along with being in a label. And, you know, it wasn't even like Bob, like, that's just not the idea that Bob had. Bob was like, I'm putting out records. Here's your record. I put it out. Wow. So I was kind of already the band dad, you know? And so it just kind of like fell on me, like, to figure out how to move this record, how to get people to know about it, how to market and promote it and get us out on tour. And I'd say I knew I wanted to have a record label maybe even by the time I went to bed that night. And I hadn't thought about it when I woke up that morning. But it was like everything happened, and it's like there's something that happens with it's not always with the record label, it's more with touring, but it goes like this. But it also like one of my last real jobs was screen printing, not t-shirts, but like fine art prints and gig posters. And then I also I grew weed for a few summers illegally, and now weed's legal and I just grow weed as a hobby. And all those things, like if there's a problem, you can't put it off. It's like all hands on deck. Everything needs to be dealt with that day. There's no moving forward until the problem's solved. And that kind of, the first sense I got was like that morning when those records got dropped off. That was one of the first times I had the feeling. It wasn't as urgent as like maybe when there's a problem on tour and you have to make it to the next town, or if you're growing weed, like if the shit's dying, you're just like, money is on fire, you know? Right. Same thing with screen printing, like the ink is drying and the artist needs this in 2 days, shit like that. But I really felt it that day, like, man, we can't just sit on this record. Like, we need to make a decision. And I was like, fuck it. I just made a decision. I'm going to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And I did. And I just, so many cool label guys, like really like were so helpful and friendly to me. Jeff Robinson from 6 Weeks Records is someone I consider a mentor. Felix Havoc from Havoc Records, people I consider mentors that really just like, I mean, it's crazy how easily you can really mentor someone. You really only need to give them 1 or 2 pieces of advice. You know, like I feel like I have tons of mentors. You know, I always looked to like the scene elders for help, you know, and they've always been friendly and stuff. Maybe it's just my approach or whatever, but everyone's always been really helpful and friendly to me. And I try to do that for everybody else too. You know, it's just kind of like part of how I like to operate.
Can you recall like maybe some of the best and worst advice that you got?
Yeah.
Best advice I ever got is for the record label is that your product isn't worth shit until you sell it, because that's a huge mistake people made. And I made it early on, and especially all distributions, like on consignment, even now where I have like a really good worldwide distribution, like, so one of the things when I first started, like I even made that mistake when we first started talking. I was like, we had 1,000 records, so we had $3,000. It was like, no, we didn't. We had to sell 1,000 records, and that didn't happen like this. So we were getting $3 at a time. But I made that mistake early, and I see other record labels make it. It's like, the records aren't worth shit. You've already parted with the money. and that's what I tell people who want to start labels too, is that like you have to like have a bunch of money, hold it in your hand, and be ready to light it on fire, because no matter how good you think that it is, if it's not marketed and promoted properly, or it just doesn't hit the right people at the right time, you might just be stuck with it. So yeah, I had to learn that having 1,000 records isn't 1,000 sales.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And so
that.
you can't look at boxes of records and start doing the math in your head. Like even early, when I would send stuff to early distributors on consignment, I'd be like, oh cool, that guy owes me $500. He didn't owe me $500.
He hadn't sold
Yeah.
500.
He hadn't sold the records yet,
Right.
and so stuff like that. Once I wrapped my head around that, it made it easier, because it's, for years it was until I started growing weed, which I did to pay off all the debts of the label and get ahead and kind of get a fresh start, like 15 years in. It took me a while to realize that, and I think that's really important, and it's super helpful too, for bands or labels. Your product ain't shit. It's valuable to you, as it should be, but it's not worth money. It's not worth anything until someone actually hands you the money for it.
I'm sure you've had this conversation with many bands and had to explain this.
Yeah, I do. I've actually, it's more to new labels that want advice,
Okay.
like we got handed 1,000 records. Most bands are getting handed 15 to 20% of the pressing. And that works good for the label and the band, because it's like, oh, if you want to make your money back, maybe that you spend in recording, you guys got to go play some shows now.
Right.
And I definitely started before bands had their own web stores and stuff. I didn't even have my own web store, I started Tankcrimes before MySpace, before PayPal, before YouTube, My first tours, we didn't have cell phones. My second tour, we had one cell phone that you could only use on emergencies. Then my third tour, I think like half of the people had cell phones. And then like a couple of years later, everybody had a supercomputer in their pocket all the time, like we do now. So
what is your logo? I've spent hours staring at it. Is it a hood? What is it?
Oh, it's a skull. It's a skull that I drew. Okay. And I drew it. It was like, so when I took over the label, Controlled by Plague, I thought at the time, and certainly because it already said Controlled by Plague on the back of my first release, that I would keep that name as like an homage to Bob and his generosity and his cool way of doing business. And also like I was putting all this work into the name, but after a year or two of like putting in work, and I ended up doing four releases, I think, under that name, and I actually realized later that like Bob wasn't that stoked on it. Like he wanted to put out more records and just give away records, and he actually did that to other bands after I kind of moved off the name. But at the time I thought I was doing like Bob like this great honor, like I wanted to do that for him. And it dawned on me pretty quickly that like it like I was putting in all this work, it should really affect me and my personality and stuff like that. And so I wanted to make it mine. And Tankcrimes doesn't mean anything. Like I just thought those two words sounded cool together, and I mashed them together. And then like when we decided to do it, I literally I used to draw a similar skull to what the Tankcrimes is, and I used to tag it. I used to be a graffiti writer, and I would tag it, and the guy's name was the Bone Crusher, but he had a body. He had a skeleton, and he used to shake these little bones in his hand. And when it was time to come up with a logo for the label, I seriously drew like 10 skulls on a piece of paper. And then I didn't used to do the big teeth like that. And I just was like, oh, those look sick. I like that. And then I even realized later that it was, and I had no idea I was doing this, but one of my favorite bands is Screeching Weasel. And if you put the logos next to each other, I was influenced in my head, and I didn't realize it, by the Screeching Weasel logo, where his teeth are placed, where his eyes are placed, and the crook on the top of his head. And I did that completely organically and didn't even realize it for like literally like years. But then it like made sense to me right away how it happened.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah,
Back in the day,
I call
remember
it the Tankcrimes skull or the Tankcrimes face,
Yeah. Back in the day, I remember staring at your logo, and I remember like Googling this has got to be like a disrupt song, or it's from the some kind of demo from some Bay Area band that I'm not familiar with. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
no,
I
it
thought,
wasn't a throwback to anything. I fucking remember the fucking instant I was sitting on the bus. I was on the N Judah train in San Francisco by myself, and it just fucking came to me. And I just thought, man, that sounds fucking cool. Like I really
it's really
chose
cool.
it because of the
Yeah.
way it sounds. And but since we're on the topic, like what Tankcrimes is, the words up open for interpretation is what else I like it. Like anybody can make it anything. I've had people ask me before, like if it's sketchy, and I thought I'm like, sure, but no, but for you, but that's cool,
Of course.
you know.
Yeah.
But when I put the words together, like what it means to me is like the tank and the crime of the tank is like unstoppable. So if you take it out of a war scenario, it's unstoppable. And so that was kind of like bravado, like hip hop kind of.
Yeah.
Like that's where that part came from. And then the punk half of it is a literal tank, and I'm anti-war. And so it was like the crusty punk peace punk part of it is that all tanks are committing crimes. The bravado part was we're in a fucking tank, get out of the way. We're committing crimes. We're not murdering people. We're doing whatever we want, and you can't stop us, you know? So, and that's kind of like my personality because I come from a hip hop background, and I always liked that. And there's not a lot of places where, and you know, even with the name Tankcrimes, I have to explain it to you for that because there's not a lot of places where that kind of hip hop bravado works in punk. You know, there's a different attitude to punk. It might be a turn off. Everything a rapper would say if you take out misogyny or whatever, but like that kind of I'm the best and stuff and that competition. Punk bands don't really do that.
Like Death Row kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, I mean, even to the very beginning of battle rappers on the street corners and stuff like that, like it never really took off in punk to brag. Punk isn't really a bragging genre the way hip hop is and stuff. So it just kind of incorporated, and those are like pieces of my personality.
That's great.
Was there a moment or a particular album where you're like, yeah, we've turned the corner and this is a success?
I don't know if when I felt like I didn't feel like real success, like as a record label in the broader music industry until the last few years. And I feel like maybe post like 20, like the years I went to grow pot out in the woods, which is where I am now. My wife and I ended up, this is where I grew pot, and my wife and I ended up leasing this property off the guy I used to grow pot for because he got out of the game when pot got legalized because it wasn't worth any money. But then he took the money he had earned and now is legal. Like, does legal cannabis now. I got completely out of the game, but moved out here to pay off the label's debts because I'd gone in a lot of debt because I was overexerting my, like, basically, I mean, I'm a super music fan. Like, that's how I do it, you know, or not how, but why, you know? So, but what happened was every band that I loved and I got excited about and I liked the people, I was just putting out too many records. And then my ambition would be like, oh, we're going to do an album and all this stuff. So I just realized like I was fucking up by like maybe a band that could have like put out their own 307 inches because they were going to play locally or maybe do some local cities. My ambition ended up being higher than some of the bands I was working with. And I was like, I made 1,000 CDs and 1,000 LPs and a PR campaign and an ad campaign. And I sunk all this money. And then a lot of bands, you know, especially in punk, and this is one of the things that's great about it, I have tons of friends that have no ambition to play guitar for a living. They like having Thursday night band practice with a 12-pack and some friends and get out of the house and go after work and play some shows when they come along. But my ambition had become, oh, I want to work with bands that are like touring all the time. And I want Tankcrimes to remain independent and just me, but I want to be like a force in the industry, even if it's just carving out this little thing. So when a lot of labels would have folded, I spent 3 years growing pot illegally and dug myself out of that hole and then was able to start fresh. So I wasn't starting over. I was starting with all that experience, but it was a new, fresh line, a new take. But all the way back to when did I feel like we were doing something? I kind of always did. I kind of always just believed in what I was doing and believed in the bands. And there's certain releases early on, like basically when we like started doing metal, our first metal release was Ghoul Splatter Thrash, which is now like a classic album of like 2000s thrash, you know, like it came right at the same time when Municipal Waste and Toxic Holocaust were kind of bringing thrash from, you know, the thrash metal bands of the 80s and 90s had gone dormant or gone rap or gone new metal. And these bands, I always say Toxic Waste or Toxic Holocaust and Municipal Waste kind of brought thrash back from the basement to the big stage, you know, and a lot of, you know, a lot of those bands, whether people saw it or not, you know, a lot of major thrash bands weren't doing shit in 2005. Yeah. And by the time 2010 rolls around, they're back on doing headlining tours and doing cool stuff and reforming and even writing new music and with new record deals and stuff, you know?
I remember all that. So, that was like Warbringer and that whole,
there's new bands. So there's only, you know, there was a huge boom of like retro thrash bands. Yeah. And now there's a handful of them that made careers out of it, you know, and it brought a lot of bands back. And that was the first kind of like boom that I was a part of. And I've kind of rode Municipal Waste coattails for so long, just because I was along for the ride. You know, I've done every fucking job you can do besides play a fucking guitar for Municipal Waste since 2002. So, you know, I've been on basement tours with them. I've sold merch. I've roadied. I've driven the van. I've fucking stage managed. I've tour managed. I was Ryan Waste's guitar tech for 2 years. I don't play guitar, and he's a lefty, and I'm a righty.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, whatever the job calls for, I'll figure it out. But so that, and then actually, while I was out here growing pot, the second season. So the first season I was here was one of the slowest years at Tankcrimes because I almost had to shut down.
Wow.
Grew a couple hundred pounds of weed. We're in the clear. We're good. Paid off the pressing plant. I owed them tens of thousands of dollars. It was brutal. I was like, I need to go back to waiting tables and shit. Like, what's my another career going to be? I didn't plan on Tankcrimes being my career, but I was already in deep enough and had aged enough doing it. Like, years go by so fucking fast. I've been doing this now 1/2 of my entire life. I turned 46 in a couple days. Started the label when I was 23. Met Municipal Waste when I was 22. But the second year I was out here growing pot, Ghoul's last album, Dungeon Bastards, we didn't even fucking try. We tried, but we didn't know this was an option for us. Hit the Billboard fucking charts. A fucking one-man label operating out of the time. Out of a fucking tent on a pot farm. Oh my God. I had cell phone service, but no internet. So I'd have to like put the hotspot on my phone. And this is when the hotspot like cost money to use. And so I'd turn on the hotspot on my phone, turn on the laptop real quick, fucking do whatever had to be done. And then like, I'd like try to like finish emails hella fast and like shut the laptop. Like, and so that really felt like, oh shit, like we're really doing stuff. And it was around that time I felt like I'd kind of like met more people in the larger like metal. I felt like we're a real metal label, not just a punk label. And I always like the one thing that runs through all the bands is punk, even the metal bands on the label, you know? And then it was like, boom, the very next summer after Dungeon Bastards. And this one was even more of a surprise because it was a debut album. Necrot's debut, Blood Offerings, boom, we're back on the Billboard charts. That was fucking nuts. You know, like now we have goals. Like the new Ghoul that's coming out this Friday, or I don't know when this goes up, but that comes out February 2nd. I've already done enough pre-orders for us to hit the Billboard charts, and we'll see how many we sell the first week in stores. So that's really cool, but that was never a goal for the label. And honestly, it's funny because it's not that many records. The Billboard charts are a joke these days. People just aren't buying enough physical units. That's why a label like Tankcrimes is up there. But
Right.
it
No, that
gets
makes sense.
you, you know, not that I was ever like, I always felt like the underdog, but it wasn't like I was like looking for respect from the industry. But then when I got it, it felt really good. And it was like, okay, I'm doing this. And there's certain things like that. Certainly when you're just running the label by yourself, where there's like, like I can tell my dad we're on the Billboard charts. Like my dad's always supported me doing the label. I kind of got my entrepreneurship from my dad. He owned a bar my whole life. And I also got my work ethic from my dad because I was a bad fucking kid. So I was washing dishes at my dad's bar when I was 12 years old. He's like, oh, I found the cigarettes in your jacket. Get to the bar, you're washing dishes now. And I started working when I was a kid and I was always in trouble. So I always worked at my dad's bar all through high school. And then I grew up in a small rural town. So I always just felt bigger than my town. So I moved to San Francisco when I was still like, after I did graduate high school, but then I was in San Francisco shortly after when I was still a teenager. But
That reminds me, I wanted to ask you. So, all right, so we're from Baltimore. Baltimore's very close to DC, but Baltimore is much more blue collar than DC. And if you talk to
yes.
us, we will say we're not the same. We're different. They're the artistes. We're the workers. Is it like that with San Francisco and Oakland? Like, what's the dichotomy
as soon
there?
as you started saying that, I was like, that's Oakland and San Francisco feel
Ah,
that way.
well, I wasn't sure
Oakland
if
and
it was
San
true or
Francisco
not.
totally certainly passed. When I first moved to San Francisco in 1998, that was when they called it, that's pretty early internet. And so they called it the .com boom.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
that was like, that was happening like right then. And then it bust, it's like a lot of like, it's crazy that like so many huge tech guys and stuff like, they get a lot of credit for like starting the internet as we know it now. But a lot of those guys, I read that like Mark Cuban got his first like $1 million because he bought like money.com or something. Like so many of these early tech guys just bought like a certain like domain name and then sold it to like Yahoo for $5 million or something,
Wow.
or whatever other tech company came up and wanted to do it. So like, and then they stayed in tech and did really well. But a lot of that stuff started just from fucking when people were flipping out about domain names and like how much value was in that, and the stock market going crazy for companies that didn't even have a product, So then we had the .com boom. So San Francisco and Silicon Valley like rocketed up in the late 90s and then crashed, So I stayed in San Francisco until 2004. And that was when like the .com boom was over and we just simply got priced out of the city. And then once I moved to Oakland, because I always like rode hard for San Francisco. It's a fucking beautiful place. It's so fucking cool, I didn't necessarily want to move to the East Bay. I liked being in San Francisco. But then I get to Oakland and I just get that East Bay vibe, like, yeah, fuck SF. Fucking tech bullshit, tech bro bullshit. They're wrecking everything, all that shit, But it was true because there was, even by 2005, there wasn't really a lot of DIY spots for bands to play in SF, while Oakland and Richmond and Berkeley had fucking 10 warehouses where, it's funny what people ask what attracted me to this kind of music at first. And I'm like a party guy. I was like, oh, you could bring a 40 ounce into a show if you were a minor. DIY warehouses are fucking awesome. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I had that.
I was used to
record,
like getting kicked out of shows or pre-gaming, It was like
I had that record. Was it Eastern Front 3 live at Ruthie's Inn? That was a great one because it had like that was perfect because it had raw power, but it also had like Death Angel on it, and it was such a great punk and metal together, and it was really ahead of its time too.
Raw Power is actually a huge band for me. I love Raw Power out of Italy, and they were one of like the first because I wasn't a metalhead in the 90s. Like I just wasn't. That shit missed me. I was from a small town. Like I don't know, like the death metal boom of the 90s like didn't make it to my rural town, or we weren't paying attention. And then by the time I got like into punk, I don't know, like the metal I knew was like hair metal and MTV metal from being a kid, or the classic rock my dad listened to. So getting into metal in the East Bay, it was like then I was all of a sudden could see metal bands playing in warehouses and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I thought that like metal was like bloated and like, I don't like, I was kind of, a lot of punks had that attitude at the time and they might still now, you know, like, oh, I'm kind of too cool for that because I don't go to a nightclub. I go to the warehouse or I go to the basement or the backyard party and stuff, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
after I got involved in like touring and stuff, I realized that metal bands work just as hard as anyone and that touring on like a club circuit is actually way harder than touring in a basement circuit. You have a schedule. We used to tour and like call. It's like, sorry, we stopped and went shoe shopping. This was my with VoteSec. Like the girls would want to go shopping, and then we'd be like, sorry, we're like 2 hours late. Like, tell the first band to go on and ask if we can use their gear. And then you get into like the real touring circuit, and it's like load in at 1 p.m., sound check at 2:30. Like, and you're like, whoa, this is so fucking different, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about the brain squeeze, because I'm sure that developed from your love of municipal waste and
Yeah, Brain Squeeze was always a festival we did in Oakland. It was kind of a label showcase, and we'd have like some other friends bands or whatever. And I had another one booked for 2020 for the fall that we never got to announce, which was maybe easier than having to cancel it or refund or whatever. You know, I'm kind of glad we didn't have to go through that, but I was really looking forward to it. And I always wanted to do a tour, but it's really difficult, you know, operating at the level that Tankcrimes does, even with the biggest bands on the label. Like a lot of people are still working jobs in between gigs, you know, and it's like hard to get like, it's hard enough to get one band to get like 5 people to all get the time off work or save up rent in advance or whatever you need to do. It's even harder when you need 8 people or 10 people or 12 people or 20 people, you know?
yeah.
So the way this Brain Squeeze tour coming up came out was it was just a Municipal Waste headlining tour that they were booking to celebrate, you know, it's the Waste them all their first album's 21st anniversary. And so, you know, and Waste usually does take out friends bands or, you know, they're really good at giving like some smaller bands, maybe like their first chance to play a bigger stage and kind of learn the ropes of professional touring more. And it was really important for them to have kind of long-term friends on this tour. And they had invited Necrot, and it just started like that, like Necrot confirmed. Okay, cool. Necrot's going on tour with Waste. That was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
They hit up Ghoul. Ghoul confirms. And then after Ghoul confirmed, Tony from the Waste just called me and he goes, dude, I got Ghoul and I got Necrot. And I was like, oh, fuck, it's happening. And he was like, there was like this pause. And I was like, are we doing a fucking Brain Squeeze tour? And he goes, we're doing a Brain Squeeze tour. And I was like, yes,
That's awesome.
fuck yeah. Thanks, Tony. Thank you. You know, so it's like, it's cool because it's Brain Squeeze is like a name. Brain Squeeze is another name like Tankcrimes. Like I took it's a little more literal, easier to find out because you can, but it's like I took 2 words and made them 1 word, and it's like a feeling, you know. It's like, you know, what's a brain squeeze? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it scary? Is it happy? Is it fun? Is it sketchy? Is it fucking cool?
Is it like
you
a brain
know?
freeze?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, is it a feeling? Is it an action? Do I participate in it? Do I watch it? Is it happening to me? Am I doing it? And so I don't think I would have been able to put together the tour without Municipal Waste. And then of course, you know, it's not like they were on the phone calling all the agents. So they have you know, one of the biggest metal bookers in North America, this guy named Nick Storch. So I got to give my hats off to him too, because he really did the heavy lifting. Tony and the Waste guys put it together. Nick Storch did all the heavy lifting. And so then I come in and do the marketing and promotion, which, you know, it's like a Municipal Waste tour. They've been so successful for so long, like all their shows are going to be packed anyways. So I'm really wanted to come in and just show, you know, which my guys know. I'm not like proving something to them, but I didn't want to let anyone down. I wanted to just really show get like the Tankcrimes hype machine behind the tour, that, you know, and show what I could really do. And we are doing tons of like extra stuff more than would have been done for this tour if it was just the Municipal Waste headliner, which would have been a great success on its own, no matter who came out with it, but made it this big family tour, and everyone's been friends for a really long time. And, you know, now we got Dead Heat opening up, and they came out on the very first tour. They've already been out with Municipal Waste, and that's how we met them. Tony was a fan and invited them out on a tour, but it was the very first tour after COVID. And so it was still 2021. It was still weird. Like people still weren't coming out. There was shows where we had to show our fucking vaccine proof of purchase just to get into the club, and people were masked up, and some people felt weird about moshing or stage diving, and some clubs were weird about it too. And just, we were still coming out of that fucking fog, and everyone was excited about getting back to normal, but nothing, how long it took. After it took a whole nother year before things were like it is now, like where everybody just actually felt normal, Right. So they came on a tour, and there was some awesome shows on that tour, but it was just kind of a weird vibe, and there was a couple stinkers even too, just because, and we knew what we were doing. We knew we were having a tour, and there was even, fans on social media being like, sorry, I'm not ready, and like, we understood that, or like, or I live with my mom, and she's got pre-existing conditions. So it's just not cool for me to go out and party with a couple hundred people and come back home, and stuff like that. It was just, we were still like figuring out how to get back to normal. And so this was cool because it's kind of giving. Since then, I started working with Dead Heat because of the relationship we formed on that short 2-week tour, and now it's cool to give them a second chance to come out and really get the full, we're going out with Municipal Waste experience.
Yeah, that's great. I saw the punk metal thing we're talking about. Municipal Waste they fit into that so well. I saw them I remember when I bought the tickets, it was them, I Hate God, and Discharge. And I thought, are these three bands going to fit together? It was seamless. It was perfect,
Yeah.
So what a great lineup. Yeah.
Yeah, and that that's kind of how we like to tour. I mean, surely, like maybe somebody with doesn't have an ear for punk or metal, everything sounds like noise or whatever. But I feel like we got a really good diverse tour because Dead Heat, like they play Slayer riffs, but they're coming from the hardcore scene, like the sportswear capital H hardcore scene. That's where they're at, and they have a lot of like influences from New York hardcore, like Sick of It All, Agnostic Front influences in their song. But they're really, they're playing like traditional crossover, but they were playing mostly for a hardcore scene. So I think it's going to be really cool to see them play in front of 1,000 people who are really there to see Municipal Waste, who are a fucking tried and true thrash metal band, So
we used to call that that's the Jeff Hanneman 5 Beers In playlist is what that is. That's
I love it.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. It's all hardcore, Minor Threat, shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And then you go right into Necrot, who are playing a pretty traditional old school death metal, and then into Ghoul, who's bringing the whole fucking stage show with the monsters and the robots and the blood and the murder and the death and all the fun stuff that comes with that. And then everyone knows Municipal Waste was one of the best live bands out there. You don't have to own a Municipal Waste record to have a great time watching those guys perform.
Yeah, we interviewed I think it was a Cremator from Ghoul.
Yeah.
Cremator, the bass player.
Cremator.
And
oh sweet, yeah.
We were in hoods.
We did.
So when the Zoom call came up.
Oh, I heard about that. That was with you guys. Oh, that's awesome.
He was like totally freaked out. He was like,
you guys are fun. That's great.
Well, we go way back with Ghoul. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I saw them in Maryland Death Fest a bunch of times. Yeah. So great band. Yeah.
I want to say also, I like your guys' dynamic, and I kind of I've been on like this press tour, man. I've been doing so much fucking interviews, which is super fun. And I like doing, I like this vibe. I like the dynamic with the two hosts because you guys have this chemistry, and then we're vibing, and we can go back and forth. This would be I probably did 10 interviews this week, and this is my first one with 2 people.
It's funny when you were talking about how when you have a lot of product, but you don't know how to market it, it took me back to when I used to run the website, because we would ask a label for just one and they would send like a box of like everything. And automatically I was like, all right, they don't have a marketing department. This is it. This is when we emailed them, it was the greatest thing that ever happened.
And then it's
we could tell on our end,
Yeah, well, you have to learn how to focus too, because if somebody shows interest, nothing better than somebody, my whole job is promoting my music. So nothing better, you guys calling are like, will you talk to us? I'm like, oh, great. Someone's going to help me.
Right.
You need help, and you've been doing this for so long, but if it's a sign that you haven't figured it out yet, because it's like, I don't want to overwhelm you. You're like, oh, I'm interested in what you're doing. It's like, okay, here's 20 CDs.
Yeah.
Like, well, fuck, then what do you do?
Yeah, we would get
there needs to be a focus, or you're going to overwhelm the person who's trying to help you. and then it can get, I'm doing this street team thing right now with the Brain Squeeze, and I've been sending out posters and just getting people to help me put them up in local towns and in their towns and stuff like that. And I've just been sending them like stickers and posters and buttons and just cool stuff. It's, you got to be a fan to want to help me out and do this. But some people are like, "Oh, dude, I can do 150 posters easy," and I'm like, "No, you can't. There is nothing easy about handling 150 posters. I know, because I do 100 posters for every Tankcrimes shows in the Bay, and that shit'll take me a full day or 2 days to do.
Yeah.
And I do that because I care that much. But no one who's volunteering for stickers is gonna no problem do 100. Somebody told me no problem 500 posters, and I was like,
Wow.
first of all, that's how many posters I made for the whole tour.
Right,
But
you and
also,
one
like,
army. Yeah.
it's like, you're not gonna do that. And so I've been sending people like 15 posters, and that's really good. And but I also don't want to overwhelm someone, because sometimes you get too much. Back to what we were saying, you get too much and you get overwhelmed. If I sent someone 100 posters, they'd be like, "Oh, fuck, I'm stressed out. Told Scotty I was going to do 100 posters, man. I didn't think it was going to take fucking, 2 days to do it, or 15 hours or whatever." And so I want there to be like no barriers of procrastination.
Right.
So I'm like, "Oh, if I sent you 15 posters, that feels easy. Throw them in the front seat of your car. Throw them in your bike basket. Throw them in your fucking backpack."
It's the same thing with it's the same thing with bands. Like back when I did the website, and now there are some bands that will, like, their music's like but their promotion is just like bam, 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 and we back off that because it's about quality for us. But then on the other hand, we will bug the crap out of a band that we like, and they'll be like, we're having dinner now, so could you call another time? I mean, you just never know what you're going to get with some of these bands. Like, we want to shout it from the rooftops. And they're like, "Yeah, well, we're a little busy right now." Like,
yeah.
that's the worst feeling, when you love a band and they're obscure. But then you say to yourself, some bands are obscure for a reason. They want to be.
We don't want to.
Yeah, they want, like I said, some bands like that, and other bands, like you said, you got to get the songs down if you want to be overly ambitious. But then there's a sweet. I mean, I'm always just looking for that sweet spot, like somebody who's got, maybe they're not writing the best song ever, but they got a song that the riff I can hum along, along, or if I see them live, I'll maybe have a track, one of the hooks caught in my head the next day. I'm always looking for stuff like that. And maybe they don't want to be the next biggest thing ever, but maybe they would be, they have enough ambition that it'd be cool if they got a free guitar one day, or got to go on a big package tour.
You put effort you put effort into this music. I mean, we're trying to help you promote it. Hello, it's like, come on, it's not the front of Rolling Stone or anything, but come on, it can be great.
Well, a lot of what I do as a label, and one of the reasons I like to have a really small roster, is because I like to give everybody that extra attention. And what I do with my bands is a lot of what a manager would do. So I kind of play both, because like, if you're on like a super big label with like 100 releases a year, you kind of need a manager just to talk to your label. Especially if you're a new band, you might want things from your label, but not even know how to ask, or know that you can ask if you're on this massive label. And so a manager will really help a band cut through the noise on a bigger label and get you more stuff. And I just try to do a lot of the stuff I do I can play both roles, and save my band some money, because they don't really need a manager at that level, especially if the label is there's so much open dialogue with the label, so we can discuss, like, what are your guys' needs, or what are your guys' expectations? And then I can go back and say, well, these are my expectations. So if we're on the same page, we have a deal. And if we're not, it's just not a right fit, And that's what else is cool about working with friends, because I have some friends that had been on the label, and it's like, now they kind of know, like, oh yeah, like Scotty's kind of moved up. And that's, like I said, like, I have friends with bands that just want to have, band practice once a week to blow off some steam, have a good time. They do have these great songs inside them, and they want to get them out, and they want to do all this stuff, but they don't really need international distribution and marketing and publicity and all the things that they don't need a booking agent, because they're going to play 10 shows in a year or less, not 100, But now, just because as the label's grown, like, that's what excites me. You know, like I've been doing it for so long. I need stuff that keeps me interested. So now working with a band like Necrot, who's going to play over 100 shows this year, I'm like, sweet. I don't want to put out another record. We'll fucking finish the tour, put out your guys' new record, and I'll work on it all fucking year. If you guys are going to play 100 shows, I don't need to move on until you guys are. Let's do this. Let's spend the whole, and that was Necrot's last album was the fastest and biggest selling record ever on Tankcrimes. And they had to cancel 100 shows. You know, we figured out how to take advantage of there being a lot of space for us during the pandemic, where there was no coverage of any live shows because there wasn't any, and a lot of the bigger bands shelved their record because they didn't want to do it without touring. So we found this little sweet spot, and we figured out how to work it, you know. But that was the same thing. Like even before the pandemic hit, I already had a plan to do one record in 2020, and that was Necrot's record. And so now we're kind of getting up. You know, we had such great sales and everything and promotion with that record, but they didn't end up playing the show for another couple years because they had a bunch of like, once the world kind of reopened, there was a series of like trials and tribulations that Necrot will talk about when they start promoting their album. But it took them another, you know, they're just getting like back to work now. And I've already been on like 6 tours, you know?
Right.
So shit like that happens, but not every label can just be like, all right, cool. Yeah, let's do one record this year. But if I have one record that can sell 10,000 LPs, that's fucking way easier than 10 records that sell 1,000, you know? And it's more fun because we're so involved. And now like me and the guys in Necrot, like, I mean, we're just involved in each other's daily lives. You know, they really make me feel like the fourth member of the band, you know?
Well, if you're like the kind of the semi-manager, have you had any of those calls where it's like, well, maybe she really did need to water her plants, you know, maybe you shouldn't take it so personally. Have you had any of those type of calls with people? You know?
Well, you know, because we're all friends, there's stuff on friendship level like that does get taken care of, but I don't consider that part of the label's job. I consider that me.
Well, you
being
said manager,
a decent
so
buddy.
that's what,
yeah,
to me,
yeah.
that's
No,
what
I get what you're
managers do.
saying.
Managers
That's where
say,
you're going.
well, you know, maybe she really did have to go because her mom was on the other line. Maybe you shouldn't take it so personally, you know, like almost like the Spinal Tap type thing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and over the course of your career, have you ever either had a band that you thought was really going to go places that went nowhere, or the other way around where you were like, this is horrible, and yet they really had to achieve success?
There's a couple bands that I wish were like that I worked with. There was this band Population Reduction, and actually Benny
I
from
was going to ask you
Population
about
Reduction,
them.
he ended up playing.
I literally have
I
on the
ended up-
sheet, whatever
cool.
happened to Population Reduction is on my
I'll tell
sheet
you,
here.
I ended up poaching him for my band, and then Benny ended up playing guitar in Votsec, and then Ghoul fucking stole him from us. So I'll break fucking kayfabe.
See, I
know
told
you guys
you
did a
something
full
happened.
cremator. I know you guys did
Yeah.
a full cremator in character. I'll break kayfabe. Benny from Population Reduction is the second dissector.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So
I
that's
love
what
that
he's
band.
doing
And
now.
they did that split with was it not
They just split with Abscess, and they did
That's
one
right, with
Dysmorphic.
Abscess, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And that
they-
was
it
cool.
seemed
That's
like
how I
they
met.
really
That's
were-
how I met Chris Reifert from Autopsy, and we've been
Oh,
great
yeah,
friends ever since. And
wow.
he's been super helpful to my band.
Chris Reifert from
too.
Death. From
Yeah,
Death.
from Death.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
from all. And it was cool. I don't think Chris considers Death his band, but we
I
know
know.
he was in that.
But I
band
love
too,
the
you know?
albums with him on them. That's my
Yeah,
Death.
no, he's incredible. So
Yeah.
we
yeah.
did that, and so I feel like if where the label's at now as kind of like part of the metal scene and part of like the decibel scene and stuff like that, I feel like if Population's album was like being delivered to me right now and we were doing it next year, and they had the excitement of a couple guys in their 20s that want to fucking go out and fucking take over the world with their fucking grindcore death metal, I think what the music they produced was good enough. And if we could have put them out on the road and they were on a label like where Tankcrimes is now, not where we were when we put it out 15 years ago, I think they could have sustained success. You know, got booked on Maryland Death Fest and maybe got out on a package tour, and we could have sold way more records than we did, you know?
Yeah.
Then there was this band from from Wisconsin called Dios Mio, like a hardcore band. And they were kind of like if Municipal Waste was like a 90s epitaph band or something, you know, they kind of
Okay.
reminded
Gotcha.
me like if Municipal Waste like spawned with Pennywise or something, you know, and they had that really fun
Right.
party attitude, but they were doing like professional songs. A lot of that, like when I come up with the epitaph stuff, a lot of that comes down to just like the way a band played its kick drum or recorded its guitars too, you know. But like when I met them, they were making their own music videos and they were super creative guys and they were making like totally professional music videos and stuff and doing really cool stuff. And I thought they were fucking awesome. And I always felt like they could have just been fucking huge. But you know what? They were just some kids in college doing it in the summers. You know, it happened with like a lot of bands. You know, they got to tour twice and they got to put out a couple records. And I think maybe one of the guys got a real job and then another guy knocked up his girlfriend and just life goes on, you know.
Rock and
Not
roll,
every band is supposed to be a career, but a lot of great bands had a great few summers, you know, and Dios Mio is one of those bands. And they never get talked about.
You bring up Epitaph. I remember when Converge got signed to Epitaph, I had to interview Jake Bannon. And I remember the interview, I was like, are you guys going to turn to Dropkick Murphys now? Like,
yeah, because that was kind of past, that was kind of post the Epitaph sound.
Right.
You know, they're like,
like scared to death. I was like, is it over? Are we done? I mean, you know,
Yeah. But that was kind of, when Converge signs and stuff like that, and they were doing some fucking rappy shit too. It was like,
right.
Oh, they don't have a sound anymore. Like a record label has to keep going on after the scene they spawn from moves on.
Yeah.
So that, you know, when you're right, when I say Epitaph sound, I'm talking about 1994 to 1998, you know, the early Warped Tour Epitaph.
I was scared to death. I was like, Converge is doomed. They're on Epitaph. It's over, you know.
Yeah.
But it, you know, they were,
and then they're like, actually, they're like one of the greatest independent labels to be
right.
You know, and so it like really helped them move their career ahead.
You said Havoc. My God, how many great fucking releases did they have? They just
Havoc's my favorite. Havoc's my favorite. You know, what a great catalog. And getting into Havoc was like a fucking gateway drug for crust in traditional, you know, punk of the 2000s and even, you know, like kind of the rebirth of fast hardcore that happened in the early 2000s, which is really like what Deadfall was trying to do, and the early Tankcrimes bands were trying to emulate that, or that's kind of the scene we spawned out of and stuff. And I love Felix Havoc and I love Havoc Records, and it's cool because he still kind of does it on the side or whatever. You know, he's like a journeyman carpenter. Like he is absolutely fucking an amazing skill. He's sponsored.
I didn't know that. Wow.
He's sponsored by a saw.
That's so awesome.
Like, I don't know shit about that.
You got to get that for Ghoul. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, right. I know exactly. Ghoul and Exhume should get a saw sponsor. They need to hit up Felix.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Felix is this incredible journeyman carpenter now, and he still does the hobby as a, you know, he just put out the new Pissed record, but it's like a split between like 5 labels and stuff. So it's definitely, you know, not the full-time stuff. Cause I was really inspired by Felix because he had his record distro and then he would drive his bands on tour and sell records the whole time. So like, you knew if a Havoc band was coming on tour, you also needed to bring extra money because Havoc was about to bust out fucking 7 boxes of 7 inches that you could dig through. And that's back when a 7-inch cost $3. So it's like any Havoc band would come out.
Their catalog
I bring a fucking $20 bill to that fucking show, and I'm going home with fucking 6 new records, maybe 7.
Yeah. It's funny you were talking about the Tool. I remember, you know that first Accept album with it's got the chick on the cover with the chainsaw.
Yeah,
it's got like. We used to laugh about this. Used to be like, this album sucks. It's got like 4 ballads, but where the hell did she get that chainsaw? That thing is awesome. You can't buy that at Home Depot. That is a commercial grade fucking chainsaw. Yeah.
I actually, now that I live out here, you know, I was going to say, I learned how to like, this shed behind me, my barn, that's Tankcrimes label headquarter. And that was just a broken down barn. And I learned how to fucking finish the drywall on YouTube and stuff like that. Like I just to turn it into the thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's funny about the chainsaw is that I have all electric tools, and like some of my neighbors are pretty country and they like laugh at me for like not having like diesel powered chainsaws and shit. Yeah, it's just so funny.
Because you're not like Paul Bunyan cutting down.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, I'm like trimming some trees out here, dude. I'm not trying to like fucking, you know, and I just like not having to have fucking gas cans around the house. Like, we live in a fucking fire zone. I don't need like just like cans of unleaded and fucking chain oil, like
That's
just like
funny.
all around the property or whatever.
They're
But
like,
it
look
is
at
funny.
get a load of this guy with his Ryobi tool.
Oh, exactly. I know my country ass neighbor like rolls his eyes when he hears my little Ryobi's turning on, ying 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 ying, and he's over there starting up basically a fucking. His has a fucking dirt bike engine on it. You know, it's like I actually don't know if they're because we're on 10 acres, so I can't see my neighbors, but I can hear them. And I sometimes don't know if he's cutting trees or riding his dirt bike because like they have the same engine.
You're like, I'm not building a log cabin here. Okay. I just am trimming. Yeah, exactly. So
I'm new school. I'm new country, dude. I'm not old country.
all right. So we play a game on the show.
Dun, 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 dun.
Let's I think you'll like this game. The game's called Blaspheming Monikers. Okay.
Okay.
And it's a metal game. So there are 5 band names in front of me from the metal archives. One of them I have made up. So I'm gonna read them to you and I want you to guess which one is not a real band. Okay. Okay. First, Trample the Cross. Second, Steel Cross. Third, Lorraine Cross. Fourth, Cross Examination. And fifth, Crossed Streams.
The second one's the fake one.
Wow, that was great. Yeah, absolutely right.
Did I get it?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, motherfucker.
Wow, how did you
listen? Well, first
how
of
did
all,
you get that so easily?
I have cross-examination records, so I knew that. The one that was the woman's name didn't
Lorraine
seem like
Cross.
one. It didn't. That just didn't seem like one that you would make up like that.
Yeah, they're
you
from
know?
France.
So I believe that sounded like a band, and the first one I actually worked with a band called Deny the Cross.
All right, that's an Overkill song. Yeah, okay.
Which is named after an Overkill song.
Right, Trample the Cross. Okay.
So Trample the Cross, I just thought like that, like I've not heard that band, but that definitely felt like a band. Plus, I've done so many fucking tours, so a lot of those band names, like no offense to local bands, but sometimes you just know a band's just like a local band by what their name is. You know?
May have done better on this. I think you did better than anyone ever has. No one's ever done that.
Yes.
Good that fast. How about explain Crossed Streams? They're in Ontario. There's no Ghostbusters references and they're black metal. I mean, where are they getting Crossed Streams from?
Oh, see, that's interesting because I definitely just thought that was definitely a local band that could be a thrash band that was like Ghostbusters sci-fi themed thrash.
No, they're not. They're not.
And they're not.
That's what I thought too.
But that's what made them a real band to me because I got the reference right away, even though apparently it's the wrong reference.
I think.
But like that reference like worked.
I think you just have you've seen a lot of really bad band names. I think that's why you knew it so well.
Even more. I've spent so much time in the backstage room at fucking dive bars in clubs all over this fucking world. I even did this thing one time where I was like, sometimes, you know, it's like you'll be in this backstage and there's 500 stickers on the wall and you're like, you know, of course we're going to put our band sticker up there. And I'll go, wait, guys, I don't know, man. I've not heard of one of these bands. Perhaps it's a fucking curse to put your sticker on this wall.
This is the wall of doom.
500 bands I've never heard of played this fucking club.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't even be here. We should maybe just fucking get in the van and leave. This is bad fucking news, you know?
No, that was great. Yeah, you looked right into my soul on that one. That was perfect. Yeah.
We had Solomon from Night Fever on.
Yeah, Night Fever. Remember them?
I worked with them. That's the only
I mean,
band,
I discovered them through you. Yeah.
That's the only Tankcrimes band that I never met.
Oh.
Because
we did a show, we interviewed him. They're
well, I know they're back. Yeah, I know they're back. They got a new album. And I didn't even know they were still a band because that's the one band in my catalog that I didn't know personally. And I did it with as a split release with Brandon, the old Waste drummer who did No Way Records, and RIP, he passed away. But we did that together. And my girlfriend at the time loved Night Fever. And the first time I heard Night Fever, Andy Horn from Cannabis Corpse played it for me in the van when we were doing an early Cannabis Corpse tour. Okay. And then they needed help because they were coming to the US and they didn't come to the West Coast. They went to the East Coast. But I like to work with all friends, but that was like a series of coincidences. I was like, this is a hardcore band a metal friend played for me. Yeah. My girlfriend at the time thought they were the best. One of my best friends, Brandon, wants help putting out the release. It was like all these things like came together.
I think that's my favorite. I think that's my favorite Tankcrimes release is their Transparent EP. I mean,
Oh wow.
and when we interviewed him, the song that I like the most is the one that he just called Untitled on that EP.
Oh, I
And
love
I
that song.
asked him, I asked him, I said, why is it untitled? And he goes, we just ran out of time. And I don't understand that answer because I was like, you did the guitars, you did the drums, you did the lyrics, but you just didn't. It was like untitled. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
I always thought because they were a hardcore band, I always like that Untitled too, because there's one of my favorite Negative Approach songs is just called Lead Song because it's the only one that has a guitar lead.
Is that on
And so
Tied Down? I think it's
yeah,
is that on,
yeah.
yeah.
And so it has this guitar lead, and so they just named it the Lead Song. It has nothing to do with the lyrics.
One.
Yeah. So great. I love chatting with you guys, man. I hope we run into each other someday. Unfortunately, I'm joining the Brain Squeeze tour when it comes through Berkeley, and I'll be on the second half.
The sounds of decay!
Sounds of Decay 1. This is Eternal Storm, a giant bound to fall. Madrid's Eternal Storm returns with their study in duality and their second full length since 2019's Come to the Tide, stacking up more layers than a yellow onion, a giant bound to fall. There is no Ernest Hemingway brevity here. This is more in the vein of an epic Tolkien. So get a glass of red and get comfortable in a beanbag chair for a journey through these 9 vast tracks that span an hour and 9 minutes.
Red wine and me in a beanbag chair is not a good visual. The only way to get me out is to hold up more wine. The opening track, An Abyss of Unreason, starts off with 2 full minutes of ethereal synth tones that swirl like wind unfettered across a desert. The drums of Gabriel Valcazar build in ominous dread like distant thunder with ever-darkening skies before swirling in like a full-force gale. The vocals of Daniel Flies come in acidic and raucous, alternating deftly between moments of atmospheric interludes and a heavy wall of sound, creating a galaxy of emotion. You can feel the planet spinning with stars rising and setting as the 13-plus minute epic flows out. Monk-like chants add to the feel of revenant doom.
A Dim Illusion has standout guitar work of Taurus and Danny Flies, alternating crunchy and melodic and even downright funky riffs at times. They swirl around, compelling the listener to flip their hair in a circle like a whip. The bass lines of Daniel Mangato are deep and complex as the drums slowly build to a blast beat fortified crescendo. The Last Refuge is another bipolar study of light and dark, alternating and layering soft vocals and demonic growls. Those other 2 guitar voices and even the drums vary from blast beats to a rolling rhythm. The melodic guitar solo here is a soarer, ending with soft horns peeping like the morning star appearing.
Eclipse is a 4-minute instrumental palette cleanser of synth drama before the band jumps back into the multifaceted melancholy mix with Lone Tree Domain. I think by far our favorite track is The Void, Valcazar's incessant percussion tapping a pulse beat. The chant segments add a mystic air here. They even, in an opeth moment, feature an acoustic guitar solo, though these guys keep it shorter and make it smarter and a little bit more impactful. Then the beast is back in like a strobe light, layering chants, yowls with tragically beautiful guitar work that eventually does fade to a buzz.
There is a rare genetic condition called tetrachromancy, where a person has an extra set of cone cells in their retina that allows them to see nearly 100 million colors. If there was an audiology cousin to this condition, it would surely come in handy when trying to absorb this multifaceted melodic release. Fans of Shade Empire and Wolves in the Throne Room will delight in Eternal Storm.
So what introduce this song?
This is The Void.
Okay, Sounds of Decay 2 is Hand of Kaliak, Corey Vrecken. I love a husband and wife team. The Scottish duo of Sophie and John Fraser have returned with their second full length on Prosthetic Records, offering their unique blend of raspy pagan metal laced with Gaelic folk melodies and lots of words I have to look up. The name of the album is Corry Brecon, I assume for the Strait of Corry Brecon, a tract of land between Scottish islands Ura and Scarba. Then there's the Gulf of Corry Brecon, which is apparently the third largest whirlpool in the world. I'm telling you, the convenience of looking this stuff up, it almost takes the fun out of it. Back in the day, we just sit around and smoke a lot of pot and try to figure out what iconoclasm sweeps Cappadocia meant. At any rate, the new record is 41 minutes with 9 songs, mostly milling around the 45-minute range. Sophie's voice is absolutely dreamy, floating up against John's guttural rasp and guitars that swirl heavy power chords with traditional folk elements that would not sound out of place played on a bagpipe.
Continuing with the geography lesson, we get to Diogaltus, a word that translates unsurprisingly to revenge. Judging from the angry riffing that kicks off in the track in one of the disc's heavier moments, it's remarkable the effect Sophie's ghostly vocals have when they swirl in, completely changing the mood of the track. John's guitar style is very distinctive, specializing in a sort of shred-heavy folk style. Want to know what a serene groin is? Sure you do.
It's a large sea monster in Scottish folklore, according to Wikipedia. The legend has it that this monster was large enough to feed on 7 whales at once, which actually rivals some of the women in Stacy's office when they have a free lunch on offer. Anyway, this is one of the strongest tracks on the record. The verse is stormy and full of rage, but giving way to Sophie's luscious coos at the chorus. John's double pace aptitude, yes, he also plays the drums, is particularly impressive in this 4+ minute epic. The last track deserves mention, despite its lack of a Gaelic title, Of Twilight and the Pyre, moving from gorgeous harp-like intro featuring Sophie's lilting vocal and some violin for almost 3 full minutes until John storms in the back door with some very cool mid-tempo riffing, crescendo-building hooks before offering another Gaelic-inspired shred lead.
Very satisfying, sophisticated, and full of instrumentation you would normally associate with death or black metal. Fans of Thy Catafalque or Amorphous could do a lot worse than checking out Corry Brecon.
Did you say?
This is Of Twilight and the Pyre.
Sounds of Decay 3 is Morbid Saint's new album, Swallowed by Hell. What is the right number of decapitations to show on an album cover? I've given it a lot of thought this week. I think 3 or more is just too much. Leave it to seasoned artist Ed Repka to grace the much-anticipated return of Wisconsin thrash legends Morbid Saint with a snappy 1.5 decapitations. And why not, after all, considering the unrestrained approach this 5-piece has adopted for their first real new music since the 90s. Produced by veteran Chris Wisco of Knockbistium and November's Doom fame, Swallowed by Hell is exactly 47 minutes of pure oral punishment in the form of wrist-snapping guitars, wild epic shred solos, and Pat Lynn's signature hard-screamed attack. Aside from the aforementioned cover violence, fans nervous that the years may have dulled this squad should feel comforted by song titles like Burn Pit and Pine Tuxedo. This is no Big Four adjacent cover band or acne-prone pizza thrashers. This is a veteran band emerging from a long hiatus that dazzle us with middle-age defying intensity.
One of the first things apparent is new drummer DJ Bagamel is an absolute beast. His double bass wallops and crisp snare attack keeping Morbid Saint's engine room purring along strong. Case in point, the intro to Fear Incarnate that he shares with bassist Bob Zabel, deftly setting up one of the disc's strongest riffs. Lynn's vocals seemed a little higher and more hook-conscious than in the almost stream-of-conscious style he employed for Spectrum of Death. The leads on this album are so much better than they need to be, very lyrical and full of melody. Examples are all over the disc, but the leads Jim Farragades and Jay Visser conjure in Bloody Floors and Fuck Them All are magnificent, particularly the latter, which incorporates a bit of the Alex Skolnick flavor. The snaking changes, cool bass interplay, and riff bonanza that makes up Bleed Them Dry may be the disc's high point. Lynn tricking lines like, they are the hammer, we are the nail, against Bagamel's dizzying percussive changes.
Proof positive that you're never told to kick copious amounts of ass. Welcome back, Morbid Saint. This is Bloody Floors. Well, this was a good one. It's been a long time since I thought about earth science.
Yeah. Been a long time since well, we didn't have snow here for 700 and some days before January's double punch. Thank you, global warming.
We talked about the fall of the magazine industry that refuses to die. What? It's not a problem. It's not a problem. We have many for you to choose from.
What about the guy who came to the door to sell me subscriptions once? Banged on my apartment door when I was in my 20s. Remember, they used to bang on your door, and you would, the more you bought, and you would always sign that you had a 3-day of rescission to cancel.
Yeah.
And then he asked me out,
Yeah.
and I bought magazines from him, and then he never showed up. So I used my 3-day right of rescission.
On him or the magazines?
Both.
Okay. The moral is, folks, don't date a magazine salesman. There you go. We talked about From Ashes Rise, a band that you all really need to check out from the early 2000s when it seemed like all the crust bands rolled.
And the rather amazing return of Morbid Saint.
Don't think about parking in my spot. I dug it out, hon.
The single mom spot on.
Okay. This has been the Snaggletooth Decay Extreme Music Podcast. Special thanks to Scotty Karate from Tankcrimes for appearing on the show. Snaggletooth theme by Gustav Fjord of Defleshed. Sounds of Decay theme by Steve Rathbone of Lair of the Minotaur. Season 3 artwork courtesy of KC Angel. Sounds of Decay bands featured this week. Check them out. Morbid Saint, Hand of Kaliak, and Eternal Storm. All content 2024, the Snaggletooth Decay Extreme Music Podcast.
I'm ready for spring.
Oh, jeez. Make this abuse much longer.
This is the Snaggletooth Extreme Metal Podcast.